Imagine a massive castle on a hill at night, lightning flashing across the sky. Imagine being trapped inside your own bedroom. No door, no window, only a tiny hole where food comes once a day. And you are left there, alive, for years. This is not a horror movie. This actually happened. The woman inside that room was once one of the most powerful nobles in Europe. Her name was Elizabeth Báthory. She lived in a world where money meant power, and power meant silence. Elizabeth Báthory was born in 1560 in the Kingdom of Hungary. Her family was rich beyond imagination. Kings were her relatives. Laws did not apply to her the way they applied to others. From birth, she had power, and power without limits is dangerous. She grew up in castles where every corner spoke of power. Her decisions affected thousands, and no one dared question her. This was a world where birth decided your fate, and Elizabeth Báthory was born to rule. But behind those stone walls, whispers had already begun. Servants spoke in fear, but only when they thought no one was listening. Young girls entered her castles, and many were never seen again. What happened inside would remain hidden for years. For years, the rumors stayed buried in silence. But power cannot hide the truth forever. When bodies began to appear and families started asking questions, the whispers turned into accusations. Servants came forward, witnesses spoke, and their stories were terrifyingly similar. In 1610, the walls of Elizabeth Báthory's castles were finally searched. What investigators claimed to find would shock the Kingdom of Hungary, and for the first time in her life, Elizabeth Báthory faced judgment. With her husband away at war, Elizabeth ruled the castle alone. The halls were silent, the servants obeyed without question. Behind stone walls and locked doors, fear became routine, and cruelty began to feel normal. No one inside the castle knew it yet, but something dark had fully awakened. December 1610, complaints reached Count György Thurzó, the Palatine of Hungary. The first official investigation was ordered. Soldiers and investigators rode to Čachtice Castle. No one knew the horrors that awaited them inside. For the first time, Elizabeth Báthory's untouchable power was challenged. What the investigators discovered next would shake the kingdom to its core. Behind the stone walls of the castle, secrets had been buried for years. Rooms once filled with laughter now carried silence, heavy, unnatural silence. Chains hung where decorations once were. Marks on the walls told stories no one wanted to hear. This was not discipline, this was cruelty, carefully hidden behind nobility. Servants whispered of screams that echoed through the night. Of doors that were never meant to be opened. Of shadows moving where no one should be. The castle, once a symbol of power, had become a prison of suffering, and the truth was no longer possible to ignore. Something monstrous had been living behind those walls, and it wore a crown. Then came the testimonies. One by one, voices emerged from fear and silence. Servants, villagers, witnesses who had carried this burden for years. They spoke of young girls who entered the castle and were never seen again. Names were listed, numbers grew, dozens, then hundreds. Each number was a life, each silence a scream unheard. What began as rumors was now undeniable truth. This was not a single crime. It was a legacy of terror, and for the first time, the powerful were forced to listen. Then, history reached a turning point. What had lived for years in whispers finally entered the light. A trial unlike any other began. Not behind closed doors, not in shadows, but before judges, witnesses, and the eyes of the world. The accusations were read aloud. Slowly, carefully. As if every word carried the weight of the dead. The courtroom fell silent. No denial could erase the testimonies. No power could undo the numbers. No title could silence the truth anymore. For the first time, authority was no longer feared, it was questioned. Justice, long delayed, finally stood upright. This was not revenge, this was reckoning. And as the trial began, the world realized something chilling. Evil can hide for generations.
The verdict did not arrive with drama or celebration. There were no cheers in the courtroom, no sense of victory, only a heavy silence. As if everyone understood that what had happened could never truly be undone. Elizabeth was not sentenced to death. Many expected it, many demanded it. But instead, the court chose a punishment designed not to end her life, but to erase her presence from the world entirely. She was condemned to lifelong isolation within her own castle. The walls that once symbolized power and protection were transformed into barriers of confinement, sealing her away from society. Her room was closed with stone and iron. Windows were blocked. Doors were locked. Only a small opening remained, just enough for food to be passed through, ensuring that no voice, no light, and no human connection could reach her. The woman who once commanded servants, ruled estates, and inspired fear, now lived in complete silence, surrounded by nothing but cold stone and the weight of her own actions. Days turned into months, months into years. Outside the castle, kingdoms shifted. Lives continued and memories faded, but inside that sealed chamber, time stood still. In 1614, Elizabeth Báthory died alone. There were no witnesses, no ceremony, and no final confession, only silence, marking the end of her life. But death did not end her story. It changed it into a warning written in history, reminding the world what happens when power goes unchecked.
Elizabeth Báthory's death did not bring closure. It did not end the story the way history often promises. Instead, it gave birth to a legend, one that would outlive generations and refuse to fade. Across Europe, whispers began to spread. With every retelling, the story grew darker, heavier, more terrifying. Some believed she was a monster beyond imagination. Others questioned whether the truth had been reshaped, twisted by fear, politics, and the hunger for power. Even today, historians continue to debate her crimes. In an age where women with authority were rare, her power made her dangerous. What remains undeniable is this: suffering did occur, lives were lost, and silence protected cruelty for far too long. Elizabeth Báthory became more than a person in history. She became a symbol. History often remembers kings and queens by their victories, by the lands they conquered, by the power they held. But sometimes, history remembers a name for a very different reason. Her story is not just about one woman. It is about what happens when power exists without accountability, when fear replaces justice, and when silence becomes a shield for cruelty. For years, people knew. They whispered, they suspected, but no one spoke loudly enough. Because authority can intimidate, status can blind, and truth can be inconvenient. Her story reminds us that monsters do not always hide in darkness. Sometimes they live in castles, they wear fine clothes, and they are protected by titles. The victims were not remembered by history the way she was, but their suffering shaped a warning that still echoes today. That no power is eternal, no secret stays buried forever, and no silence can outlast the truth. This is not just a story from the past, it is a reminder for every generation, because when power goes unquestioned, history repeats its darkest chapters.